What if I told you that Lewis Hamilton has just discovered an advantage in the SF25 that could not only change his season, but also the current hierarchy of Formula One, and that this advantage has been there all this time, hides hoping to be unlocked? And this is where Ferrari made a mistake that many teams have made in the past with great champions. Underestimate the real adaptation time that requires such a fundamental change. From the technical direction to the track engineers, there seemed to be a blind faith in which Hamilton, for being who he is, would find a way to adapt quickly. But he didn't. And not because talent was missing, but because the difference was abysmal. Brembo have a much more aggressive initial bite, an immediate response that punishes any braking pressure error. Instead of feeling progressivity, Hamilton found violence. Each tire blocking, every more meter in the braking criticism, every waste of time in the curve, was a reminder that it was not yet in command of its new car. That lag was not only noticed in telemetry data. It showed in Hamilton's expression during interviews, in his body language in the paddock, at team meetings where he asked for adjustments that Ferrari could not always give or wanted to give him. The SF25, with all its aerodynamic promise and technical evolution with respect to the SF24 of the previous year, was a car that seemed to demand a completely opposite pilot style that had turned Hamilton into a legend. It was more rigid, more nervous at the curve entrance, more dependent on mechanical grip in low-speed areas. And all that made errors multiply when there was no confidence in braking. The most worrying thing is that even cold data could not show this problem. From outside, everything might simply seem a loss of time due to general adaptation. But internally, in technical meetings, Hamilton had already clearly identified that the brake was not just another problem in the list. It was the problem. And it wouldn't be even Baku when I would finally have the perfect setting to face it and conquer it. Baku is one of those scenarios in which the slightest error expels you without warning. A street circuit that combines endless straight with sections so technical that they seem designed to humiliate any car or pilot that is not perfectly prepared. And it was precisely in that environment where Lewis Hamilton finally unlocked the true SF25 DNA. What happened in the free training of the Azerbaijan Grand Prix was much more than a simple time improvement. It was a discovery that can change the course of its entire season. Telemetry does not lie. During the second free training session, Hamilton not only led the times with a record of 1:41,293, but its route in the most technical sector, that of the castle, was surgically precise. In a circuit that rewards control over aggressiveness, Hamilton executed a free session without errors, and with a fluidity that we had not seen so far from 2025. But the really important thing was not the time itself, but how he achieved it. For the first time since he signed with Ferrari, Hamilton felt he could fully trust the brakes. The Brembo system, which during so many races had frustrated him, was now his ally. He had found the exact pressure point, the correct modulation that allowed him to stop late without blocking, and enter curve with a stability that until then had been dodge. He openly said that the brakes were finally working perfectly, a phrase that for the majority may seem trivial, but that in this context it represents the end of a technical nightmare. This domain over the braking allowed Hamilton to exploit a second dimension of the SF25 that until now had not been evident, its specific aerodynamic efficiency for urban circuits. Ferrari arrived in Baku with a configuration developed in secret, a technical solution inspired by the Spa-Francorchamps rear spoil, but adapted to the urban environment. A puzzle spoiler with square supports at the ends, and a cut profile to reduce the drag without sacrificing grip. This solution allowed the car to keep end speed in the endless lines of Baku, but also to offer aerodynamic load in the slow and closed curves of the castle sector. It was a bold solution, and it worked perfectly. The conjunction between the final braking and this aerodynamic evolution turned the SF25 into a car that was not only competitive, but dangerous for its rivals. On the speed maps, it was observed how Hamilton managed to stay among the three fastest in line, but at the same time he was one of the most consistent in passing through slow curve. And that, in Baku, is equivalent to controlling the race. But it was not only a matter of technique. There was also a psychological change in Hamilton. What we saw in his gestures, in his statements, went to a pilot who took a weight off. Someone who had spent weeks questioning if he could really connect with this car, and who now understood that it could not only be fast with the SF25, but it could be the fastest. He felt part of the car. And when Hamilton feels that connection, there are not many on the grill that can stop it. The most impressive thing is that all this happened in silence, without great displays, without strident holders, only with a balanced car, a perfect session, and a pilot who had done his homework. Baku, with his hidden traps, witnessed a key moment in the narrative of the season. the moment the Hamilton-Ferrari project ceased to be an abstract promise to become a real threat. And it must be said clearly, if Hamilton has managed to unlock this version of the SF25 in a circuit as demanding as Baku, the question is no longer if he can fight for podiums. It is if, from here, you can lead a comeback that puts it again in the conversation for the title. Formula One has seen many technical resurrections, but few as symbolic as this. A legendary pilot, a team in search of redemption, and a car that, when understood, becomes a lethal weapon. When Lewis Hamilton got off the SF25 after that free session in Baku, he did not do it as a pilot who had had a good day. He did it as a pilot who had solved a puzzle, that had found in one afternoon the response to months of accumulated frustration. And that type of findings not only change a race, they change whole seasons. What began as a simple adaptation to the Brembo brakes ended up being the entrance door to a much deeper understanding of the car. An emotional, technical, and strategic connection with the SF25 that, until that moment, had remained blocked. And now that Hamilton has managed to break that invisible wall, Ferrari's immediate future can be completely redrawn. There is a key element that should not be underestimated: trust. In Formula One, having a competitive car is only half of the equation. The other half is to have a pilot that creates, without hesitation, that this car can be taken to the limit. What Hamilton experienced in Baku was not just an improvement in braking. It was the birth of a new relationship with its car. He stopped fearing his reactions. He stopped doubting in risk areas. And that trust transformed his driving defensive to offensive. The most revealing thing is that this transformation occurs just before a series of large awards where this ability can make a difference. After Baku, the calendar takes Ferrari to circuits where mechanical grip, braking precision, and aerodynamic efficiency are absolutely crucial. Circuits such as Singapore, Las Vegas, and even the always unpredictable Marina Bay. In all of them, the SF25, in the hands of a confident Hamilton, can become a structural threat to McLaren and Red Bull's domain. But this goes beyond the circuits, because the psychological impact of this revelation in Baku also shakes Ferrari internally. The engineers know it, the strategists know it, and Charles Leclerc, his partner, knows it too. In a team where leadership has traditionally been shared or disputed in silence, what Hamilton showed in Baku could establish for the first time a clear hierarchy. If this performance is repeated, if the consistency appears, then Ferrari will no longer have an equitable distribution of prominence. He will have a leader, and that leader will be Lewis, and that forces the team to make decisions. The technical development of the car, the allocation of new pieces, the approach of the strategies during the race. Everything can now turn around the British pilot. Because when a team identifies a pilot who is in perfect symbiosis with the car, the natural thing is to give it operational priority. Especially if that pilot has proven to be able to maximize every technical detail with surgical precision. Now, there is more that cannot go unnoticed. What this resurgence of Hamilton means for the global narrative of the season. It is not just that a veteran has found his rhythm. It is that one of the greatest names in the history of sport has decided to rewrite its legacy with a new team, and is starting to do it successfully. And in a championship where the margins are increasingly narrow, where the struggle for the title can be defined by tenths of second, having Hamilton in attack mode is news that no rival wants to receive. If the SF25 maintains this progression, if the aerodynamic adjustments continue to refine as they did in Baku, and if the work environment between Hamilton and its team continues to consolidate, then what seemed like a transition season can be transformed into an assault campaign. A real attempt to conquer what many thought it was unattainable, an 8th world title now dressed in red. That's why Baku was not just a free training session. It was the time when everything changed. The day Ferrari ceased to be an unstable promise, and Hamilton ceased to be a pilot in transition. It was the perfect conjunction of technique, emotion, and preparation. It was, perhaps, the first true chapter of the Hamilton-Ferrari project as both parties dreamed when they signed that contract. When we analyze the magnitude of what happened in Baku, it is easy to fall into the trap of reducing everything to a technical change or a good day on the track. But the truth is that what has happened goes much further. We are practicing, possibly, the founding moment of a new chapter in the recent history of Formula One. A chapter that was not entirely written or guaranteed, but that Lewis Hamilton has determined to build, piece by piece, since his arrival in Ferrari, because what Hamilton found in Baku was not just performance. It was purpose. For the first time throughout the year, his body language inside and outside the car coincided with that of a pilot who knows exactly what he is doing and why he is doing it. The connection with the SF25 is not an isolated event, but the culmination of a painful, meticulous learning process and full of doubts. And now that it has reached that point of understanding, the message for the rest of the grill is clear. Lewis has returned. And it has not returned to participate. He has returned to win.